Hi, my name is Todd Grimes, and in this program we're going to explore the techniques for organic modeling in Lightwave, focusing on our character's body. We've got some concept art to use as reference, so let's start by taking a look at it. Now if you load the content from the DVD, the character animation content directory, onto your disk, you'll find under the images folder there's a concept art folder. Within there we can open up some of our model sheets. So let's go ahead to drawing full and take a look at the character's full body. As you can see, he's kind of a big goofy superhero, very top heavy, small head, kind of angular body with a cape and his standard superhero utility belt. We're going to start by focusing on the torso region. And if you can see, he's got a really broad chest and very wide shoulders. So we're going to try and keep to that design as we try and translate this into a 3D model in Lightwave here. So let's go ahead and come into the modeler. And I'm going to start with a box. And again, let's go ahead and activate the box tool. And let's just go ahead and open up the numeric panel. In the numeric panel we can set the proportions for the model so we can keep it to relative scale. So I'm going to start with a width of say 2 feet. It's just a guess at the beginning. We're going to scale the character at the end, but he's got pretty broad shoulders and this is going to represent his chest part. And height of 1 foot, let's make the depth 1 foot as well. Now put all the centers at 0, 0, 0, so it's right on the center there. Then we come down here, I'm going to give it 4 segments on the x-axis, 1 on the y and 2 on the z. Okay, so let's close the numeric panel, hit the space bar, and take a look. And so far we've got just a box with a few segments. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the symmetry function activated so that I can edit the object on one half and have the operation performed the same on the other side. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and in the Modify tab, I'm going to use the drag tool, Control-T on the keyboard. And in this, I'm going to start in the top view and just start rounding the shape a bit to fit the character's scale and size. So with symmetry active, I'm just going to come over here and you can see as I move the points around, the same operation is happening on the other side of the x-axis there. So I'm just kind of rounding off the shoulders at this point, manipulating some points around. And I'm going to come over in the front view here and do the same thing. Yeah, let's bring these up a bit here. This area represents his pectoral region. And in the side view, we're just going to do some more tweaking here. Yeah, let's take a look. Yeah, let's look in the perspective window. Maybe move this in a little bit. It's a very broad form. Start off with a low level of detail. And what I did was hit the tab key to toggle the model between a polygon model and a subpatch model. This just represents how the model will look when it's subdivided. Okay, so let's drag a little more. So now what I'm going to do is focus on building the body off down from just below the pectorals here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all the polygons right on the bottom row here. And I'm going to use the Smooth Shift tool to actually extrude that geometry. So let's go over to the Multiply tab. And under Multiply we'll find the Smooth Shift tool. Shift F on the keyboard. And what I'm going to do is I've got the tool activated. I'm just going to right click once. And then I'm going to go back to Modify and use the Move tool, letter T on the keyboard. And let's just move it right down. And then what I'm going to do is Control T for drag. And let's start dragging some of these points in a bit. In the side view. And let's deselect those and hit the Tab key. Kind of sharpened up that edge there a little bit. And drag a little bit in the perspective window here. And I'm just kind of making it sort of, again, resemble the form as best I can at this low detail stage. And let's do another smooth shift. Going to select these bottom polygons one more time. Let's drag that there. And let's perform another smooth shift operation. Shift F. Going to right click once, and T for move, and just pull it down. And let's go ahead and use the stretch tool. And I'll just stretch these in a bit here. And let's go in the side view. Stretch the whole thing in a bit. And this is the starting portion of his stomach region. His abdomen just below the pectorals. In the perspective window, if I hold down the alternate key, it allows me to rotate the model around like this. Once I let go, I'll start selecting stuff. So let's go ahead and drag some more points around. Let's go ahead and look at the back. I'm going to use the drag tool again, Control T. And in the front, I want to have sort of a ridge right there to represent his pectorals. In the back, I kind of want it to be a little bit more spread out so that there's not quite as much of a ridge right there. And we'll be adding more detail as the model progresses. We add more musculature. Okay. Now let's come back to the front view, drag some points around a little bit more. And go back to the perspective. And I'm just trying to keep it in general shape with the form and his lower body, and just kind of look at the model and refer to the art to see how it's looking. Let's go ahead and select all these polygons at the bottom here. And I'm just going to stretch them in a little bit more in the front view, pull them down a bit. I just want to kind of give him that V shape that he's got in the artwork there. And we're going to be adding some detail in here for the muscles beneath his pectorals as well as his abdomen. And right now we're creating a landscape that we'll use to add in the detail of the musculature, like his pectorals and shoulder muscles and things like that. So let's look at this region under here now. What we want to do is have the pectoral muscle follow right up into the shoulder there. So let's take a look at these areas here, which will ultimately be the region we extrude out as the arm. And I'm going to go ahead and drag some points around just a bit. Let's pull these up here. Pull that up. And let's move these in a bit here. I'm just going to try and shape this shoulder, get the shape just right to extrude out the shoulder. Okay. I'm using pretty much just about each view, including the perspective, to do a lot of this editing. And we're just getting the very basic form for starters. And now let's go ahead and, with these same polygons selected, let's smooth shift them. And just move it up like that a bit. And that'll ultimately represent where the shoulder will be. Again, that's a T on the keyboard for move, and Control T for drag. And then let's smooth shift these guys one more time. Right click once, and then stretch, H on the keyboard. And then each time we add detail, we'll spend some time doing dragging the points around to manipulate the geometry. So what we've started here is the initial shoulder region. So let's go ahead and just do a little bit of dragging. And again, I'm just kind of trying to get it to the shape similar to the art. He's got sort of big shoulder muscles there, and I want to sort of accentuate that bulbous feel of the shoulder, the upper arm. So just kind of drag the points around to sort of mimic that shape, the roundness, almost like a half a sphere kind of shape. So now we've got the flow of the geometry going when we go in to create the detail from right into the shoulder muscle. Okay. And when we come back to the arm section, we'll be looking at this region and how we'll go about creating the arm right out from the shoulder there. Okay, so let's get down into the back again. Let's just take a look. Let's just move a couple points around back here. Yeah, let's move these up just a bit here. Okay, so now what we're going to do is focus on this region here and start building the detail that we need to create the abdomen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select a few polygons in a band right across his abdomen here. And what I'm going to do is use a tool called bandsaw to cut through that section all around the body. So let's go to the Construct tab and find the bandsaw tool. I've mapped the tool to F6 as a hotkey so I can refer to it using the keyboard rather than coming back to the menu each time. So open up the bandsaw here, and right now what I want to do is put a cut right through the center. So I've enabled the divide and I've got the cut right in the center there. So leave it on auto and let's select OK, and you can see what happened there. Put a cut all the way around that band of polygons. And let's start manipulating some of those points. And just start doing some dragging. And pull them out a bit here. This side view, I'm pulling them forward a bit. And again, I'm just sort of referring to the art. Just kind of shaping the form. Pull that down a bit there. So it's kind of like I'm manipulating it like clay. So as I'm creating the form, again, I'm just dragging points around, and I'm going to be visually referring to my concept art. Let's take a look at that. If you look at the character in the front view as well as the side view, see he's got his pectorals as well as a muscle coming down here and some ridge in the abdomen. And basically right now we're working on this region in here and building the landscape we need to create the detail of these particular lines and shapes. So right now we're looking right around here, just below his pectorals, right above his abdomen here. I'm going to continue to move some points around. And let's lift that one up. Okay, now let's go ahead and do another bandsaw again. Deselect those. We'll go straight through here. So, using my hotkey F6, popped up the bandsaw tool, and I'm just going to cut straight through there. Okay, and let's come down on the front view and just move some of these points in a bit. Again, I'm sort of trying to give him that V shape that he's got in the art. Just where his abdomen starts to begin, his waist comes in quite a bit. And let's take a look. This shape here sort of tapers in like a big V. So I'm going to start building a landscape I need to create these shapes and narrow in his abdomen region. So let's see what we've got here. And let's start pulling some points around. And this would be like his spine region and his muscles on his back. And just kind of thinking about the ultimate shapes. Even though I've got just this much detail at this point, I'm sort of manipulating the geometry into the general form. And just starting to create the general shapes that we need here. You can see it slowly start to take form and slowly start to look a little bit more like the shapes we're after. The more detail we add and the more point manipulation we do. Okay, so let's focus on, again, this region just below his pectorals there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do some smooth shifting here on this geometry, sort of pull out and get those lines that I want in the shape that are there in the design. Okay, so let's start with these 8 polygons I've selected here. And just kind of move them around a bit, kind of rounding out this shape just above the abdomen. And let me go ahead and smooth shift these. Shift F, or right click once, and H for the stretch tool. Let's come to the side view here, and just kind of stretch them out like that. And then let's go to the front view and pull them in a little bit. Okay. And so now we've got more of a defined ridge there, and we just need to manipulate some of the points to get the shape better. So let's take a look. We're going to focus on the front of the torso now, and it's starting to get a little distracting in the front here. So I'm going to go ahead and hide the geometry in the back of the torso, so in the front view I have a better view of what I'm seeing. So let's go ahead and select everything right on the back half. We'll come over to Display tab here, and I'll go ahead and say Hide Selected. So now the geometry is still there, it's just hidden. And now I have a clear view of the front section that I can focus on. So let's go ahead and select some of this geometry here, and I'll hit Shift A, or Fit Selected. Zoom in a little bit. Okay. And again, I'm going to drag some points around here. And again, I'm going to use pretty much almost all the views to do this, perspective as well as side view and front view. And it's a good idea to save frequently during this process. Let's pull that in a bit there. Just kind of slowly kind of shape that design that's underneath his pectoral, sort of referring to the concept art. Representative of that muscle right above his stomach muscles and just below his pectorals. And let's pull these down a little bit more on the side here. And just kind of looking at the model, referring to the art, and then determining how I need to move the points around a bit. Just trying to get that perfect shape there. So just kind of tweak the points here and there and try and get them to slowly take form. So now we have sort of a definitive shape there. And let's take a look at the concept art here. So basically we're looking at this shape here, trying to get the geometry that we need to create these lines in this form. And while this character is a cartoon character, a comic book character, his designs are based from actual anatomy. Some books I recommend would be Dynamic Anatomy or Dynamic Figure Drawing by Bern Hogarth. They really capture realistic anatomy, but in that comic book sort of feel. Bern Hogarth is a former comic book artist. Okay, so let's get back here to the model. And we're going to continue to tweak the points and massage the points as we need the shape. But for now, I've got the landscape there that I'll need, so I'm going to go ahead and focus on other regions. I went ahead and hit the backslash, which is unhide. You can see when I hid the geometry, it was in polygon mode, and then I had since hit the tab key. So now I've got is a half and half. So I'm going to remedy that using the statistics panel. So let's go ahead and hit the W key on the keyboard and bring up Polygon Statistics panel. What I want to do is I'm going to find faces here, which is any polygon that is not subdivided. So let's go ahead and hit the plus next to faces. And then let's hit the tab key. Problem solved. Okay? And I'll just go ahead and close that. Okay. Okay. So now let's go ahead and focus on the abdomen. Let's take a look at this geometry right in here. What I want to do is accentuate the ridge there so I can get a little bit of definition in there. So I'm going to go ahead and select this geometry and let's go right through to the back there. Got 10 polygons selected, and I'm going to go ahead and smooth shift those. So Shift F and right click once, and then H for the stretch tool. Start in the front view here, stretch them in a little bit, and the side view, stretch them out a little bit. And then we're going to manipulate the points a bit. So it started to give me that shape there that I was looking for. And it also gives me a little bit more polygons down below for when I go to create the leg section. So let's go ahead and drag some points around and manipulate this shape a bit. Start in the front view here. And I kind of just want to get it that almost a rounded shape for his stomach, similar to how it is in the concept art there. Let's bring that forward a bit, round it off here. And I just want the hint that he's got some musculature under his suit. And I can also edit in the sub-patch mode here. Just put the drag cursor right over the intersection, and I can drag around the points. Let's widen that out a little bit. Okay. And let's go ahead and look at the back real quick. And let's take a look. Select some of these polygons in the back here. In the back, I want it to sort of be more of an indentation rather than sticking out. With a little bit of bump in the middle for the spine. And let's go ahead and pull these up a bit. I'm just kind of shaping it to keep the geometry sort of clean and not have any strange pinches or anything like that. At the same time, try and capture the designs and the lines that are similar to the concept art. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is focus on this region back here and these muscles that come around to the back. Take a look at the concept art again one more time. And there's a big muscle right back there. And you can see it sort of comes around to the back as well. So I'm going to use the geometry that I have in there now. I'm going to smooth shift it, start dragging the points around to make that shape. Okay. So let's start with these polygons here. First thing I'm going to do is go ahead and do in the perspective window. I'm just going to drag that in a little bit. So once I smooth shift, I'll be able to get that shape back with extra geometry. Okay, so let's take these 8 polygons here and smooth shift once. Let's right click. And then let's go to the top view. Pull them out this way a little bit using the move tool. And then let's stretch them a little bit. Stretch them here. Okay. Now let's start editing some of these points. Let's go ahead and pull that out a bit. And again, I'm just dragging the points around. Take a look in this view. Let's pull that down. And kind of placing the points where I need them to sort of mimic those shapes, specifically the shapes that I see in the concept art. And get which sort of are lines that represent these muscles and things like that. So I just kind of look at the model in all different angles and twirl it around and stuff, just to make sure that from every particular angle I'm getting the shapes that I want to see there. And let's zoom out a bit here. So you can see I've got the landscape. What I want to do, let's refer to the art for a second, is really define that shape. So I've got the geometry in there. I've just got to do a lot of point manipulation to get that just right. So let's go ahead and start pulling some of these points out. Way out here. I usually feel that it's better to exaggerate more and dial it back and have something not quite exaggerated enough and sort of in turn look bland. So do it till you think it's practically ridiculous, and if that is the case, then you're probably on the right track. Let's take a look at the back here. Let's pull some of these in a bit. And just trying to get that shape that's similar to the flow that creates the spine in the back there. Okay. And let's pull some of them out this way. And again, it might look kind of strange at this stage. We're slowly just trying to get those shapes. And let's do one more thing. Let's grab the lower half here. This whole section down here, including here. And in the front view, let's stretch that in a little bit to further accentuate that shape. So one thing I want to do is take a look at the polygon flow and some of the musculature here. And right back here, the way this muscle is lined up on the back, I want the curve to sort of come around this way. And right now, the geometry, the way I have it, sort of changing the flow a little bit from the smooth shift. So what I'm going to do is use a tool called Spin Quads. So let's go over to the Detail tab and find Spin Quads. And the hotkey is Control-K. Let me select these. And I'm going to go ahead and hit the button there. You'll see the direction of the polygons has changed. Hit it again, and it's changed again. And one last time it goes back to where it originally was. So, let me look at the geometry. I'll hit Control-K, the hotkey, for Spin Quads. And let's start with this arrangement here. Just going to move some of these. See how it looks here. Good. So what I'm trying to do is take this flow of polygons and keep it more natural. As you can see, if I go back to the original, the flow sort of stops here. So let's go ahead and come back to here. And as I manipulate the points around, I may find that this direction might have actually been better. So let me drag some of the points around here. Let's take a look. See what we get here. Okay. So I'm looking to get this line, if you can imagine it, just to keep going around. So let's grab some more of the geometry of this particular muscle and just do some more dragging of points a bit. Work that shape. Maybe just trying to keep it in line with sort of the similar shapes we have in the art there, which is sort of kind of exaggerated musculature, you could call it. I have a very broad back on this guy. Let's take this muscle again. And to better shape it to the form, right now it's a little bit low. Let's go ahead and take that geometry in the side view. Let's just stretch it up a little bit. and drag some of these points in a little. There we go. Okay. Alright, so now what we're going to do, let's take one look at the concept art again here. Let's just reopen it. Okay. So you'll notice in this pectorals, it's got sort of a crease right there, a little bit of definition underneath here. So let's take a look at this section in here and see if we can get sort of this rounded off feeling here, forming some smooth shifts. Okay. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just select all the geometry in the back again. And again, I'll hide selected, which is the minus key on the keyboard, so we could focus in on the chest area here. And what I'm going to do is work on getting the crease right in the middle of the pectorals there. So I'm going to turn symmetry off for a moment, because I want to focus on these polygons here, who have an edge right on the x-axis there. And I want to smooth shift them away from there. If I did it all at once, they'd come together. So, start with this side, go ahead and smooth shift. And let's look in the top view here, stretch them out, and stretch them in a little bit in the front view here as well. Okay. And then let's start manipulating some of these points around. So let's take a look in the perspective view. And let's go ahead and drag some of these points. Control T, pull that up a bit, pull that down. Now let's take a look down here. You can sort of see how I'm trying to just get that shape right. So just kind of, again, moving the points around into positions that I wanted them to be in order to sort of get the look and feel of that particular muscle. And I sort of refer to the concept art, see what I've got in there. Let's take a look. Now let's go ahead and look at this region here and change some of the flow here. One important line that we want to keep is a line coming underneath the pectorals right up to the shoulders there. So let's take a look at some of the geometry that we have in there now. Right in here, let's go ahead and spin quads. Shift Control K. Do it 2 times and get that shape. Let's go ahead and drag this point over a bit. And again, we want to keep this flow going right in here. You can see it's interrupted by this polygon right here. So what I'm going to do is, let's deselect those. Let's grab that polygon right there, and let's just cut it out. Hit X on the keyboard. And I'm going to go into point mode here. Select that point, then this one. And I'm going to do Control W, weld them together. And now let's drag again some more. And we can retain that line right there. Okay. Okay. So let's come back into this region, pull this up a little bit higher. You kind of want to keep it, sort of give him that outward broad chest, so just kind of shape that up a little bit more. So now we've made a lot of editing on one side, and we want to have the geometry be the exact same on the other side. So what I'm going to do is just re-mirror the model. So let's go ahead and hit backslash to unhide the geometry we had hidden earlier. And let's go right here in the front view and make sure that symmetry is still off, and just select everything on the left side of the body. And let's just cut that away by hitting the X key again. And we're going to re-mirror. So let's come over to the Multiply tab and find the Mirror tool. It's capital V on the keyboard. Let's go ahead and open up the numeric panel. And by default, it's right where we want it, which is on the x-axis, and the center's all at 0. And I'll leave the Merge Points button selected, which will merge any points that are right on the mirror plane, in this case, directly on the x-axis. So let's enter all the fields, hit the space bar, go ahead and close that, and see what we've got. Okay. So we get a little definition, do some further editing in here. Let's make sure we turn symmetry back on, Shift Y, right down in the bottom of the interface there. And let's come in here. Just edit some of these points a little bit more. Pull these up a bit. Zoom out again. Okay. And let's see, before we go on, let's just take a look at any of the other sections of the geometry that we might want to change the flow of the polygons here. One area in particular might be right in here. Let's go ahead and take a look at these polygons. Let's spin quads on those. Control K. One more time. Get a little bit of a better directional flow there. Let's edit some of these points a bit. And let's take a look in here. And take a look at the landscape of your geometry. If there's any areas where you think the flow could be optimized by spinning quads, you can find those regions and experiment with the Spin Quads tool. Okay. Okay. So now let's go ahead and focus on this region up here, where we'll make the shoulders as well as a hole for our head to stick in there. So let's go ahead and go back in to polygon mode here. And let's select these 8 polygons right on the top of the body here. And I'm going to go ahead and smooth shift those. Right click once. In the top view here, let's stretch them in. And then come down to the front view, pull them up a little bit here. Then what I want to do is still, let's look in the top view, start dragging some of these points around, pull those in. Okay. And in the front view, let's do a little bit more, drag these over. Pull that out a bit here. See what we've got so far. A little bit of a ridge there. It's going to be kind of hard to see since this character is wearing a cape. Let's take a look at the concept art real quick. And the area we're focusing on is right here, and it's beneath the cape. But in the back view, you could sort of see the shapes that we're going for. Sort of a bump there, and then up into the neck. Let's come back to our model. And again, we want to keep the geometry flow going. Just going to take a look at some of the regions here, just make sure everything's the way we want it. Let's pull this down a little bit here. Okay. Again, let's look right at these 4 polygons right at the top there. And we're just going to make a little section for the head that we created to sit in. Okay. So grab these polygons here. Let's go ahead and smooth shift those. In the front view, just move them up a little bit. Just a little bit to make his collar there. Stretch him in a little bit here. Okay. And then let's smooth shift these one more time. And we'll stretch them in a bit. The top view. And then let's come over to the side view. Stretch them up this way a little bit. Okay, maybe a little bit more. And let's smooth shift one more time. And this time, let's just hit T for move and sink them in a little bit. Let's deselect those. We've got a little collar to have our head stick in when we're ready to do it. And what I'm going to do is look at this geometry here and edit it slightly, but we're going to come back to it when we stick the head in, because we're going to have to maneuver these points around to fit snugly around the neck there. Let's take a look back a little bit here, see what we've got. Close to being done with the torso section. Let's just take a look at how it's comparing with the 2D art so far. Okay. So what we've got is all the landscape we need, but in looking at the art, probably want to broaden his shoulders quite a bit as to what we have here. And once we do that, it looks like we might be closer to what the shape is in the 2D art here. Let's go ahead and make that shape there. Let's go ahead and select, say, the shoulder section here. And what I'm going to do is deselect that one right there. So I have just this shoulder piece selected. Just go ahead and move that out a bit. And let's see. And maybe in the side view, let's pull it back a little bit. Okay. And now let's take a closer look right at the shoulders and just maneuver some of the points around just a bit. Okay. So on tab here. And we'll get a better idea of what we've got in this particular region when we start creating the arms. We'll do some more manipulation of this area to fit those shapes. Just want to have big old shoulders. Big, broad shoulders. Okay. And let's come back and look at this line here. Let's pull this down a little bit more and get more of a slant that way. Let's focus in here. Pull these up a little bit. And let's pull this section down a bit. And just some point manipulation, tweaking. And let's take a look in here. Again, these are some of the areas where we might be able to optimize the flow a bit by spinning quads. I'm unsure about this one, but let's see how it looks if we form a couple of spin quad operations. That might be better. What I want to avoid is losing any certain lines that we have in there. Let's take a look at this geometry here. Okay, let's drag these around a bit. Let's go ahead and pull that one in there. I want to keep those lines that I had in the concept art. So just kind of drag the points around a little, but try and retain the actual shapes. And we're not going for sort of a realistic looking torso. We're sort of going for realistic anatomy in an exaggerated cartoon torso. And just kind of fine-tuning it, sort of going through the whole piece of geometry and trying to sort of fine-tune it into the shape I want, similar to the concept art. Okay. Alright. So let's go ahead and save this object. And so we set our content directory. Going to go right to the actors folder. This is our character, Owlman. Let's go ahead and put it in the work directory. We'll find some files in there. And let's just go ahead and call it capital B and underscore 01 since there's some similarly named files in there already. So now we've completed the torso section, and then next we'll focus on extruding the arms out from the geometry that we have now. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the model and paste it in the next available layer, just in case there's anything we want to come back to. So for the arms here, I'm going to focus on this region right in here. So let's go ahead and back into polygon mode here. Take these 4 polygons here, actually 8 since there's 4 on each side. And let's go ahead and smooth shift them. And the side view here, let's stretch them in a little bit here. And this is the region right in here that will be kind of like the armpit. So let's drag this point in a little bit here. Pull that one in. Okay. And now let's smooth shift one more time. And with the move tool, just move it out right to the side like that. Now let's go ahead and grab the stretch tool. In the front view here, let's just put the cursor right here and stretch it all the way until it's pretty much flattened out. And now what you're going to see is this skinny arm man. Not quite right yet. We're going to massage some of these points and then begin smooth shifting out his musculature, biceps, and triceps. So let's focus in on this region. And let's pull some of these points around here. And at the same time, it's sort of shaping the shoulder muscles as well. Let's take a look at this perspective view here. That roundness. Okay, let's grab these polygons again. And let's just kind of stretch them out in the side view here a little bit. Let's take a look at this shape here in the side view. We want it to be relatively round, but more oval. Okay. And let's pull this down a bit more here. Okay. So let's start with the front side of the arm, the bicep muscle. Let's tweak these out a little bit more here. Big shoulders, big arms. Okay. So let's grab the front 4 polygons here. And let's smooth shift these. Right click once. And then the top view here, let's go ahead and stretch them in and pull them out like that. Again, we get this big, big bicep. Okay. And now let's manipulate some of those points around. Okay. Let's pull this in a bit here. Okay. And again, just kind of laying out the landscape. It might not be exactly right yet, but I'm building the geometry that I need to be able to tweak it into the shapes that we want. Okay. Again, his arms are almost so big they're almost stubby. Let's take a look at the concept art again. And if you look at his upper arm there, the girth of his bicep and triceps is pretty disproportionate. So ultimately we're going to be tweaking the arms to sort of match that design. Right now they're a little bit more proportionate to his torso here. What we'll do in the end is sort of stretch them out and make them look really quite large. So I'm going to focus on the tricep area. Let's go ahead and select the 4 polygons on the back side of the arm. And we're going to do the same thing we did in the front, but we're just going to tweak the shape a bit differently. So let's go ahead and smooth shift. Top view here, and stretch in. Stretch it out. And here in the side view, let's pull them out a little bit that way. And what we're going to do is edit these points as well to get sort of a tricep-like shape. So with that, I'm going to drag some of these points around. Let's pull these in. Okay. Pull that out. And pull those way out. And basically what I'm doing, sort of trying to mimic real-world anatomy of a tricep muscle, which sort of scoops down like that in the back. If you look at the back view of the concept art one more time, see right there, there's sort of a line there, something we can create, sort of pick up that shadow. It sort of scoops back, it's sort of lower on the outer edge than it is in the inner part of the arm. Let's go back to our model here. And we'll be, tweaking some of these points and doing some spin quads and things like that to make it just right. Okay. So we've laid the landscape. I'm ready to move on and come back to tweak the shape. So now let's go ahead and move on to the elbow. Let's go ahead and take a look at these polygons here. The 4 on each arm. And let's smooth shift those. Move them out a little bit. Maybe stretch them in just a little bit here. And this section that we just created with the smooth shift is going to be where the joint is, with the elbow in the back and joint right in the middle there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, let's go ahead and manipulate some of the points just a little bit. And let's grab these again. And maybe move them a little bit closer. Smooth shift these one more time. Pull them out. And let's stretch them out a bit. In the top view as well. This is the start of his forearm. And you can see I'm making it sort of bulky, and it's currently wider than in the bicep part of the arm. But we're going to come back and tweak that. So let's continue to smooth shift this out. Just laying out the general landscape again. And setting this up for the amount of geometry and the area of geometry that we need to create the shapes we want. Okay. And smooth shift again. And this will just be right at his wrist section there. And we'll be adding some detail in here as well. Let's see what we've got so far. And you can see the arms are starting to take form, but they still, as per the design, need to be beefed up quite a bit. So let's come back again now to the forearm here. And what I'm going to do is just work my way down right to the wrist. Let's come back to this region here. I'm going to take the polygons right at the elbow joint, and let's go ahead and bandsaw through those. Now, just open up the bandsaw. I've selected a band of polygons there. Let's cut right through the center. And notice that bandsaw doesn't work on the symmetry function. So what I'm going to do is deselect those and perform the same operation on the opposite side. Since I have the cut right in the middle and it's the same exact geometry, points will still be symmetrical. Okay. So let's get back in there. And I'll start with the elbow here. Let's take a look at the back side. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is just manipulate these points a little bit. Okay. Now let's grab these polygons here. And I'm going to go ahead and smooth shift those. And let's look in the front view here. Let's just stretch them in a little bit. And in the top view as well. Let's pull them in a little bit closer. Stretch tool. Okay. Now let's start manipulating some of that geometry around a bit. A little bump for the elbow there. Smooth a little bit of that out. Push that up. Okay. Again, I just want to have a hint of an elbow there, something to just make that shape. Okay. And on the front side of the joint, I want to create something that almost looks like a little bit of a wrinkle in the clothing in his suit here, so that when he deforms his arm, he looks like he's got a little bit of a wrinkle there. So let's take a look at the concept art here. And you can see in the drawing there's a little bit of a wrinkle right at the elbow there. So it's got a little bit of a bunching of the cloth. So we're going to make that shape as well. So let's come back to our model. And let's smooth some of these points around in the front. Widen this out a little bit. Okay. And let's select these polygons right in the front here. In the front of the side of the elbow. Okay. And Shift A, let's get a little closer. And let's go ahead and smooth shift those. And the top view here, stretch them a bit. Okay. And now let's edit those points a bit. Keep them selected, makes it a little easier to see. Let's stretch these a little bit here. Pull these in. Pull that up a bit. Let's grab some of this geometry underneath. Accentuate that wrinkle there. Let's see what we've got. Let's zoom back in. We've got the landscape here. Let's just make it a little more subtle. Let's pull the whole thing down a little bit more. And let's just work on making it a bit more subtle there. And right where the wrinkle ends here, I'm going to spin quads, starting with the top part of the arm. Let's go ahead and Control K once. So again, it almost looks like it's coming around that curve there. And let's just edit some of those points a little bit. Okay. Pull these in a bit here. Maybe. See how that looks a little bit better. And now let's go down to the underside here and spin quads here as well. Let's do that one twice so we get the same directional flow for the wrinkle. Pull that out a little bit. Right up into the elbow there. Again, that might be a little too much. Let's make it a little more subtle. Want the hint of that wrinkle. Let's go ahead and select some of these. Okay. So when we go to deform the mesh, we'll have sort of a nice little area of a natural looking joint there. And one of the things you want to keep in mind, especially when you're modeling a body, is the joint regions, specifically the shoulders as well as the elbow and things like the knees as well. You want to have enough geometry there to be able to deform properly, but not too much so that you get too harsh of a crease. So with that, we're taking into consideration eventually how we'll be moving this character around. Now, this should be a good amount of geometry to create the elbow joint. Okay. Alright, so moving back down the arm, let's go ahead and take a look at the forearm. And the forearm is a little bit less descript. Let's take a look at our concept art here. And it's just kind of that shape, which we've started to already get. We've created the elbow. And we just want to manipulate the points around, get a little bit more angular than we have now. One thing I like to avoid is having anything look too doughy or too sub-patchy. So let's take a look at the forearm here. Select it. Shift A to fit. I'm going to go ahead and hit S. Let's save our object too as well at this point. Okay. So what I'm going to do is manipulate some of these points around a bit. Pull up in the back here. And let's go ahead and put a division through here as well. So let's select some of the polygons in this band. Open up our bandsaw here. Divide. And again, let's do it to the other side as well. It's the bandsaw. Doesn't work on symmetry. And let's come back in here. Okay. Now let's start with the front section. Take a look. Kind of want it to come in here. Pull that down a bit. And move that up a bit. Okay. Now let's take a look at the back side. Just pull that up. Okay. Okay. Now let's go ahead and take a look right at our wrist section here. Create a little area where we'll put our hand geometry in. So let's look right at the end there. We want it to look like it's the end of his costume, right at the edge there. So let's smooth shift, bring that forward a little bit. And then let's go ahead and smooth shift one more time. In the side view here, let's stretch it in a little bit. Okay. And then let's smooth shift one more time and just pull it back a bit. Now again, just like the neck collar, ultimately we'll be manipulating these points around to fit snugly around the wrist that we'll be modeling. But for now, we've got the points and a landscape we need. Okay. So let's just go ahead and take a look again at the concept art and see what we can do to make the ratios here more fit the art. Bulk up his arms a bit. So you can see again, especially in his 3/4 view here, how beefy his arms are. Let's go ahead and take a look. Bicep almost the width of his pectoral there. In the side view, it's not quite as noticeable. And you'll find that sometimes in concept art, things don't really match what they would really be in 3D space. So like, for instance, this. If his arm's this wide here, it would be at least that wide in the straight profile. But again, sometimes 2D art doesn't exactly match what happens in real-world 3D space. So let's go ahead and copy this and paste it in the next available layer. And let's zoom in on our arm here. Let's just select all this geometry here. Okay, and let's deselect this row. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the stretch tool and really start in the top view, just kind of really bulk it out there, and then come to the front view and do the same thing. To the point where it almost looks silly. And that might be a little bit closer. Let's pull it down just a bit. Okay. And then let's inspect the shoulder region, which obviously now needs some work. Okay. So let's go right in here and take a look. Let's do some point dragging. He's got very broad, large shoulders, so we can sort of probably get away with making these much larger than they would naturally appear. Take a look at the top view. We want to avoid any abnormally squished looking geometry and keep the form as well. Okay, so that might end up being better for us. The arms might be a bit too long now, but when we go to scale the character to the proper proportions, we can always tweak that geometry as we need to. Okay. And let's save this again. And just take one last look here. And again, look over your geometry. If there's any regions where you think maybe could benefit from directional changes in the polygon geometry, go ahead and experiment with the Spin Quads tool. For instance, down here, I do want sort of a definitive line where the bicep is, but I might be able to still achieve it and spin quads these two polygons, which have interrupted a flow. Let's go ahead and spin once, spin twice. Let's go back to the first one. And let's see if we can still work this into the proper shape. Again, we sort of want somewhat of a line right in here. So let's work on this a little. Pull these in. We've got a better flow. Let's see this area here. Let's see what we have here. Let's try the same thing on this top section. I think that one will keep, because you want to have a little bit of a pinch going on up there. And let's take a look back at the forearm. Just going to smooth that out a little bit. Kind of keep to the concept art and also edit the points as you see necessary to make the model look good. So now we've got our torso created. In the next section we're going to look at how to create the hips as well as the legs and feet. So let's start by copying and pasting in the next layer. I always like to have that succession of previously created objects, just in case you ever want to go back, create a character with different types of arms, but the similar torso. You can always keep this old geometry, save it as scrap stuff. So let's go ahead and now we're going to focus on the lower region. Selected all these polygons underneath here. Okay. And And I'm going to create the hip section. So let's go ahead and smooth shift and just bring it down, straight down like that. And what I'm going to do is take a look in the top view here. Now these polygons here on either side are going to be what we're going to use to smooth shift out the legs. And this middle section would be the middle of the hips. So let's go ahead in the top view, sort of pull some of these points around a bit. Let's move these in a bit closer. Move this out. Move that in a bit. Okay. And in the front view, let's take a look. What we want to do here is, let's zoom in here. And I want to create sort of an angle going here for how the hips come out from the waist section here. Then pull these down. Okay. And let's manipulate the waist a little bit here. Yeah, let's pull in the side view. Let's pull these out a bit. And right here, let's pull this down quite a bit. And got a little hip section there. And again, let's refer to the concept art. You can see in the art, the character's got a very large upper body. And his lower body is a little bit, while it still sort of has that musculature, it's sort of smaller in terms of the scale to his upper body, as well as his head. So we're going to give him sort of a narrow hip waist region and then extrude out some of the legs and some of that musculature. Okay. So let's come back to our model here. And let's go right in here. I'm going to bandsaw right through this band here. Let's hit F6, open up our bandsaw. And we've got a division there. Let's start by looking in the side view. And pull some of these points down a bit. And pull some of these out, which is a section that will be sort of his glutes. Give him a little bit of a back side here. Pull those down. And let's pull those up a bit. It's almost like we're working on what would be sort of the underwear section. And the back here, let's pull these up a bit. Okay. Okay. So let's focus on the legs. What I'm going to do is take a look at these 8 polygons here. This is the geometry from which I'm going to extrude out the thighs. Let's go ahead and I'm just going to pull these in a little bit. Smooth shift. And T for move. I'm just going to bring them right down. Now let's stretch them out a bit in the front view here. Just kind of flatten them out. Okay. And let's take a look in the top view here. Let's go ahead and take this shape that we've got. And I'm going to drag some points around. Just sort of kind of round that out a bit. Okay. And he's somewhat of an angular design again. So when we create his musculature in his legs, we're going to sort of try and retain some of the sharpness to the angles in that musculature. Go ahead and keep dragging here. I'm going to kind of keep his legs relatively straight. Let's take a look at the concept art again. You can see that sort of the angular nature of the art. And you also see that in each of these poses, he's standing sort of heroically. So back's arched, legs are back a bit, spread. And all this is what you would call a pose. One thing you want to do when working with character bodies is try and keep everything relatively on a plane. So you want to keep the legs straight down, arms straight out, And everything that is in the character's attitude is considered a pose and something you put in the rig. This way you can keep all the bones aligned on their proper channels, and it makes it easier to edit the skeleton as well as to form the mesh. So let's come back. What we're going to do is continue on the legs, and we're going to build them straight down, as if the character was just standing with his ankles together, rather than in a pose here. Okay. You'll notice it's sort of the pattern we've been following so far. If you look up the spine, still pretty much right on a plane, and the arms come straight out on a plane this way. Once we pose the character, we can bend his back and arch it and sort of pull the arms back and things like that. Okay, so let's come back to our thighs here. And still working with this geometry down here. I'm just going to start smooth shifting and laying in the geometry that we need, and then I'm going to come back and add the detail as well as massage the points into the proper shapes. Okay. So let's go ahead and smooth shift again and pull it down. Let's go on the front view here and just stretch it right out so it's flat, and stretch it in a little bit as well. And top view as well. You always want to think about all three views so that you never end up with anything that's sort of been stretched drastically in one view but not in the other. And ultimately we'll be adding the detail we need to sort of pull out the muscles in the legs and things like that. So let's pull that down a bit. And let's smooth shift these one more time. And to about there. Just get sort of a square section there. And this is the region that we're going to come back to. That will be the knee joint, just like we did the elbow joint. Okay. Now let's go down, create his calves. Let's go ahead and smooth shift, bring down again. In the front view here, let's stretch them out a bit. And as well as the side view, just kind of pull them out a bit like that. Another thing I'm going to do is just for the shape of the muscle in terms of anatomy, let's go in the front view and use the rotate tool. It's Y on the keyboard. And just go ahead and put it right in the center there. Just rotate those, kind of like that. Okay. And we'll smooth shift one more time. So I'm bring it down, stretch it in a bit, and be sure to stretch it back in the side view as well. These are the startings of his calf muscles there. He's sort of got sort of a angular frame with these very bulky, stiff muscles. And from here I'm going to bring out the shin, smooth shift these again. Let's bring them right down. Again, let's straighten those back out again with the stretch tool. And narrow them a little bit. And again, I'm trying to keep it pretty much right on the plane there, as well as in here. Okay. And we'll continue to go down to the feet. Before we get to the feet, we'll start working our way down, adding the detail. Now again, if you look at the model right now, it doesn't quite look right. It doesn't have the detail we need. The scale ratio isn't quite right yet. So we're going to start adding the detail we need, massaging the points to get that deformation. Okay. So let's start with the thighs. Again, let's kind of beef them up a little bit. I'm just going to drag some points around here. Okay. And again, what I want to do is keep some of that angularity in the line, where it comes down here and scoops down into like that. And what we have now is sort of more of a curve, because we've got just a little bit of geometry in there. Let's take a look at the side view. Let's pull some of these hamstring points out here. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bandsaw through this section here. So let's open up our bandsaw tool. Say OK. And do the same thing to the other side. Okay. And now, with just what we have here, you'll start to see a bit more of the angularity. But let's go ahead and edit these points, get that shape, pull these up a bit here. And in the side view, let's pull them in a little bit. Kind of accentuate that hamstring muscle in the back there. Let's go ahead and reference the concept art. And this is the sort of angularity we're going for. Kind of a big beefy thigh, and then more of a smaller knee. And same thing going on with the calf. Pretty angular. Still curved, like animation shapes are best designed for, but yet still angular, so that it doesn't look all doughy and sort of meta-nerby if you're an old school light waver. Okay, and what we're trying to go for too in the back is that sort of hamstring look. Okay. We don't want to really be distracted with too many intricate shapes and designs in the animation. Anything that's too much will take away from the movement. Animation has always been best utilized in simplicity of shapes. So I like to keep things relatively simple and not have too much distraction. So we're focusing more on design than level of detail. So what I'm going to do also is, let's go on the front here, pull this up a bit. I'm going to bandsaw right through the top as well, and that'll help us not only to further make this angle more defined, but it'll also help to retain some of the rigidity in the geometry when we go to start deforming it with the bones. So let's grab this bandsaw, and just leaving the division right in the middle because we're going to be doing so much editing of the points anyway that we've got to sort of move them around a bit here. Pull these out even more so. See how we're starting to get it to look a little bit more like the art there? Let's focus in on this region here. Pull these in a little bit closer. One thing you want to be somewhat careful of is any geometry that crosses over the intersection here. For example, these points. Anytime you cross over the line and you've got symmetry activated, the next time you move the point, you're going to have sort of the opposite effect going on. Now, not that you can't cross over, but you just want to keep in mind that you'll be manipulating the points slightly differently. Okay. So you can see we're starting to get that form in the back as well. Let's focus on the back side of his leg for a minute too. Now let's pull this up a bit. Try and get that, pull that down. Try and get that hamstring look. Again, any reference material on human anatomy is always a benefit. Unless you look like a superhero, in which case you can look in the mirror, but in most cases, I'm going to require some reference material. Okay. Now let's go, now that we've got more of the thigh definition in there, let's come back to his rear end here and study his glutes a little bit more. Let's pull him out a bit, give him a little bit more of a musculature rear end here. We don't want to look at, make it look like he's nude, but we want to give him somewhat of a definition back there. Okay. Yeah. Now let's move down and head on towards his knee. Okay. Let's take a look at this section here. Actually, I'm going to move it up a little bit. Might be down a little bit too low. Let's start with the front part. Let's grab these polygons here. And let's focus on the front. Let's go ahead and pull these down. Pull that point down a bit. Maybe move that one up. And let's grab these two polygons right in the front of the kneecap here. Stretch them a little bit. And let's go ahead, let's pull them back in the side view a bit here. Let's make a little kneecap out of these. Okay. So let's go ahead and smooth shift. Again, we don't want it to look exactly like a perfect knee because he does have a costume on. We just want to give the hint that his knee is underneath his tights, so to speak. It's a bat suit. So he's got a little bit of a bump there. Again, we could reference the concept art, see how it looks. It's a little bit of a shape there, a little bit of a form. That's what we're going for there. Let's check the side view again. Maybe pull it out a little bit more. Again, you can always dial things back, so if you want to make it look extreme, go for it and see how it comes out. You'll often find that everything can be pushed further. So now what I want to do is continue with the knee and go to the back of the knee. And just like we did with the elbow, I have a little bit of cloth bunching there. Let's take these polygons here. Let's create a division right through there so we can create our bunching as well as have more optimized geometry for a joint which is right in that section. Okay. And let's go through both sides here. Okay. And maybe we can edit our knee a little bit now too. Let's pull these in a little here and here. Let's take a look. And squeeze those in a bit. Okay. And let's come back here. And pretty much going to perform almost the exact same operation that we did on the elbow there. Let's grab these polygons right here. And the back here, let's just kind of move them up. Okay. And smooth shift. In the side view here, stretch them out a little bit. And let's focus on the perspective window here for a sec and edit some of these points. Let's pull these in a bit. And these sort of little indentations deform nicely when you have a joint in there and sort of give that cartoon kind of wrinkle feel. Again, we're not going for absolute realism here. We're kind of going for a stylized design. Get the point across, but keeping the simplicity of the shape. And again, let's go ahead and take these polygons here and let's go ahead and spin quads. What you'll notice is that I have the two here and two on the opposite side of the previous smooth shifted operation selected. I'm going to spin quads and you're going to see that the ones on one side are going to go one way and the ones on the other side are going to go the other way. So let me Control K. See, they're crisscross now. This is the one I want to keep, the one that's going on that angle, down towards the knee, as if the cloth is being bunched up that way. So let's deselect those and spin quads these one more time so we get them all going in the right direction. And then let's go ahead and do some more point editing here. Perspective window here. Let's pull these in. Same on this side. And we get that sort of bunched up feel. So let's just continue to examine the geometry we have there. That's looking good. And I'm going to go ahead and save the model. Be sure to save frequently. Let's continue on here. We're going to start working on his calves. And just look at the relationship here between his knees and his calf. Let's take a look at the concept art. See what we've got. If you look, very drastic curvature there. It's kind of, again, angular and still curvy. So we're going to try and edit this geometry and make it sort of follow that shape. Let's come back in here. And let's do the first thing here. Let's bandsaw right through here. Both sides. Okay. And let's start maneuvering the points around a little bit with the drag tool. And remember to work in pretty much all three views. All four. You can work in the perspective view as well. And let's accentuate this shape here a bit. let about as far as it can go here. Let's pull these up a bit. Get that really goofy look. Okay. Let's look at the back side for a sec here. Kind of similar to a lot of the other muscles, like the triceps. Got a kind of an upward center going in this muscle. Let's go ahead and sort of try and capture that a little here. Let's get that sloping downward feel. Let's examine the front a little. Let's go ahead and get sort of a shin going on. Let's take this point here, push it in, maybe this one as well. Get more of a shin feel there. Just going to move them a little bit forward. Pull it right in there. See how that looks. Okay, and let's come back down here. And let's go ahead and bandsaw through here, sharpen up this angle here on both sides. And start manipulating the points around a bit. Just want to sharpen up that curve a bit more than it was. So let's pull these points up. Let's bring them even further. Drag those up. Now you'll notice, again, in the concept art that this curve is somewhat sharp, whereas this one's a little bit more broad. So it's kind of closing in the proximity of the points on this side. I'll spread them out a little bit on this side. And let's take a look in here. Just pull these out a bit. Okay. And he's got that big sort of goofy looking extruding extreme musculature. Let's come back here a little bit, right above the knee again. Let's take a look, move these in a bit. Okay. Okay. Let's save again, and let's go on to creating the feet. Let's focus in on the lower leg here. And we're going to start with these polygons right at the bottom here, and come back into polygon mode, and move them up just a bit, a little bit too long there. Okay. Let's take this whole chunk and sort of move it over a little bit. Okay. And let's take these polygons right on the bottom here. And you're just going to smooth shift them and bring them down a bit. In the side view here, let's stretch them out a bit. And in the front view, do the same, just a bit. And I'm also going to use the rotate tool in the side view here. Let's go ahead and put it right in the center, kind of rotate it like that. And let's stretch it out. Okay. And let's smooth shift again one more time here, bring it down. And come into the side view here. Let's just stretch it right down so it's flat. And in the front view, let's widen it out a little bit as well. Okay. We've got the back of the heel going. Let's focus on this side a bit. Just drag the points. Drag that one out. Okay. Now let's focus on the front. Let's grab these polygons as well as the ones on the base as well. So you've got 12 selected total. And let's go ahead and smooth shift and move it right over. In the side view here, let's put the cursor right at the bottom of the foot, stretch downward, pull it in. And in the top view, let's go ahead and stretch them in a little bit as well. Okay. And let's go ahead and manipulate the points a little bit here. Let's pull that down, put these guys back. Okay. Let's grab these again. And move some of the points around. Okay. And let's smooth shift again. And in the side view, pull them out. And go ahead again, stretch them down a bit. In the top view, stretch them, widen them quite a bit here. And let's do one more smooth shift of these. Right click, stretch, move, stretch them down. And in the top view, again, let's narrow them up. And let's go ahead and tweak some of the points. Start with the top here. And what I'm going to do is take our feet geometry, go ahead and select it, and hit plus on the keyboard. We'll hide unselected. This way we get a better view in the top of what we're working with. Okay. So let's go ahead and in the top view start dragging some of the points around a little bit. Again, we sort of want it to have that shape of a foot. So let's pull some points around. Make it so the inside of the foot kind of sticks out a little bit more, whereas the outside is more broad curve. Right. Okay. And let's take a look here and add some of these points. Right on the toe. Pull you down. And we start to get that foot-like shape. Let's look in here. Pull the arc in a little bit. Lift them up. Okay. And let's come back to the heel here. Maybe widen that a little bit. Okay. Let's take a look at our feet in the concept art and see how they're shaped. Now they're kind of stubby as per the rest of his body here, and they've got a little bit of a solid sole. So what I'm going to do is smooth shift the bottoms, try and get a little bit more rigidity down there. Let's come back to our feet, and let's grab all these polys right on the bottom here. Now let's smooth shift them, bring them down a little. Get a little more solid form there. And let's try and get rid of that. Okay. Okay. Let's see if we need to scale them as per the rest of the body here. Again, they're sub-patch mode. Let's fix that there. Okay. What I'm going to do is bring them up a little bit. The shin area is a bit too long. Let's pull them up a bit. Okay. And then again, zoom in on the ankle and and then we'll look at the concept art and see what shapes we want to add in there. Let's pull this down a bit. Just get kind of a around the foot feel here. Sag that. Pull out the heel a bit. Okay. And let's take a look at the art. And like the other joints, the knee and the elbow and things like that, got a little bit of a bunching there. So I'm going to do a similar process that I did for those two, just right at the ankle there. Do some smooth shifting and get that shape come out a little bit. So let's come back to our feet here. Pull some points in a little bit here. And let's go ahead and bandsaw right down here. 6. And I'm going to move the cut. Let's move it down a bit so that it's not right in the center, but more closer to the ankle. There we go. And then perform the same operation on this side. Okay. And let's move some points around a little bit here. And I'm going to focus on this front half here. Let's go ahead and grab these polygons. Deselect those. Start with these. Actually, let's go ahead and select those. The wrapping goes almost around the whole foot in the art, so let's smooth shift these. Pull them forward a bit. And let's stretch them out a little bit in this view. And start manipulating some of the points. And more drag tool. And I want to close in these points a bit, keep this shape visible yet subtle. So let's pull these out here. Okay. Let's pull these down quite a bit here. Right. Now, let's work on making the shape a bit more subtle. And again, just kind of dragging points around, making it work. And then I just want to have a similar shape kind of in the back there. Again, I bring up the art. And you can see, sort of especially in the back view, got a similar thing kind of going on in the back. Rather than an upward crease, there's sort of a downward crease. So let's take a look at the heel section. Let's grab, say, these polygons here. Right in the back there. And let's go ahead and smooth shift those. Stretch them out a bit here. Okay. And let's kind of edit some of these points here. Let's bring that in. Let's pull that right down like that. We want sort of a downward curve to these. This one. Okay, and let's spin quads right here. I want the flow to sort of go up like that. So let's spin quads once. And again, since we have the on the opposite side there, you can see one set went one way, the other set went the other way. This is the direction we want, so I'll just deselect those, spin these one more time. Okay. And then let's edit some of these points to make it work a little better. Pull that forward quite a bit. Smooth these out. see how that looks. Not too bad. Just pull it in a little bit here in the back. Let's pull this whole piece in a bit. Should do the same down here. There we go, we got a little bit of wrinkling going on down there. Okay. And you might notice a slight change in the ratio here. We're going to check the ratio of the lower half of the body to the upper portion of the body and see what we've got. So let's save again, and let's bring up the art. And you can see in general, the legs, again, in a lot of heroic stylings of character design, it's often the legs are longer than they should be. You can see the distance of the legs is a bit longer than the torso. On an average human, you're pretty much roughly the same distance from right at the hips to the top of the head to the bottom of the feet. And a lot of comic book characters or characters that are supposed to be a bit more long and streamlined, oftentimes you lengthen the legs. So what we've got looks pretty good, but we want to be sure that we have the right proportions as per the art. Let's take another look here. Right now what we have looks to be pretty good in terms of the legs being longer, but it might need to be a little bit bigger. Once the head comes into about here, probably a little bit more room. And what we have is a good ratio of the arms to the legs, which in the art, the arms are pretty ridiculously large while the legs are muscular but a little bit smaller to give them much more of a V shape. At the same time, the arms currently would be way too long, so we could stretch them in a little bit. So let's start. Let's grab the bottom half of the body here, from the waist down, everything that we've done in this chapter here. And let's use the size tool under modify, which is capital H. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn symmetry off here for a second. And let's just go in the side view. Take a look. Let's open up the numeric panel here. And I'm just going to scale them up just a bit. And I can see from the numeric panel, the size tool, we reset it rather. Had some values in there already that are inherent from previously using the tool. So what I'm going to do is take a look at what I've got. I don't want the model to become off symmetry. So you can see, since it's not centered on the X, sort of shifting over a little bit here. So let's undo and scale them up. Let's see a little bit more. There we go. Undo that. We'll keep the same relative factor. Change that center to 0, and then leave the Y and the Z. And hit apply. Now we've scaled it, but we've kept it right at the center. And it'll still remain symmetrical. So if we turn symmetry back on, which is Shift Y, should still be symmetrical there. Now it looks a little better. And let's come back to his arms here. And let's stretch them in a bit, even adding more to the feel of this character's arms being sort of too bulky for his body. Okay. At this point what I have is close to a completed frame, minus the hands, which we'll do next. But what I want to do is just check the scale and make sure that the character has the right ratios. So what I'm going to do is fix him so that he's in the right position. We started at the center to keep everything symmetrical. So right now our ground plane, which is a value of 0 on the y-axis, is running right through the center of the character. So let's go ahead and let's just move him right up so that his feet are at the bottom there. And then let's check his height. So now what I want to do is create a template that I can use as a reference to scale the character. Generally, human beings are about the same height as their wingspan. So if I create this template, it'll let me know how long to make the arms as opposed to the torso. Okay. So what I'm going to do is come into the next available layer and let's just create a box. Shift X on the keyboard. I'm just going to make a box. No need for segments there, I'll just remove them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the set value tool to enter numeric values for what I want this box to be. Let me just center it here. What I'm going to do is let me just select the bottom points here and set value them to 0y. And what I'm going to do is select these points and set value them to the height that I want the character to be. So Control V, we use the set value tool here. And on the y-axis, let's say this is kind of a big guy. Let's say we make him, he's a really big guy. Let's say we make him 6 foot 4 inches. To me, that's a really big guy. So this is the height of 6 foot 4 inches, and that's what the scale I want the character to be. Now, you select this polygon, and I'll hit copy, and then paste, C then V, and then I'm going to hit R. Let's rotate it 90 degrees. And let's go ahead and center it, F2. And I'm just going to move it up, sort of like a T. So I know if the character's head is this high, that his arm span should come right to about the edges of this object right here. And another thing that is a general reference point is the distance between the head and the waist area. Generally, from the bottom of the waist to the feet, it's roughly the same distance as the bottom of the waist to the top of the head. And these scales vary depending on the type of character you're using. If you have a character with an overly large head, obviously this scale gets a little thrown off. If you have a character with an overly small head, it gets thrown off the opposite way. Generally, you want the arms when they're at the character's side. The hands you want to come to about mid-thigh. So let's go ahead and take this polygon here. Let's cut right down the exact center of it. Use the bandsaw tool. And let's go ahead and put it on odd. And put that division right in the middle there. We'll hit clear. So it's right midway through. Say OK. So I've got a perfect division right down the center. And a big general template that I can use as a scale ratio. Again, with this character, his hips are actually probably going to be a little bit higher. And his wingspan will fit within here, but his head is so small that the ratio might be a little bit different. So let me just go ahead and copy this. I'm going to cut it out, and I'll just go ahead and paste it way down in the last layer there. And let's take a look right now at our body again. And let's put that object we just made in the background. You can see we're pretty close to the scale we want based on what we started with for when we created the torso. And that should be enough room for his head. And basically what we want to do is bring the arms in a little bit, because once we make the hands would probably come out to about here. So we need them to come in a bit. In addition to that, looks like the waistline can come up a little bit, since again we're going for that sort of stylized look. So let's start with the arms here. Make sure symmetry is back on. Capital Y. And let's stretch them in even more here. Again, if they start to look really ridiculously fat, then that might still be okay. Of course, got to manipulate the points a little bit here. And we could stand to have his arms be a little bit longer than the average, since his legs are going to be higher up than normal. So let's grab also, let's say everything right down to the shin from the waist. And let's go ahead and zoom in on that, pull it up a bit. Again, we don't have to be exact. We can always edit these further once we see how the character deforms. Okay. Okay. So again, you can see there's a lot of upper body and not so much on the lower body. Again, that's sort of what we're going for and how the art is represented. So in the next phase, what we're going to do is create the hands for the character. We've got the body ready. We've got a little sleeve for him. So now we're going to make some geometry that we can stick in that sleeve and have his hands. Okay, so now we've got our body geometry, and we're going to go ahead and work on building the hands. And one thing we want to consider with the hands is having a low amount of detail at the wrist. Okay. So we're going to start again with a box in a new object here. Let's go ahead and just drag out a box in the top view here. Let's get rid of this segment there. And what I want to do is have 4 fingers come off the hand, and each finger have 2 facets. So I need a total of 8 segments altogether. Okay. Okay. And I'm not going to extrude the box this way, so let me just hit spacebar here. So just shrink this up. Okay, so now I've got 2 fingers and then 4 fingers total. So what I'm going to do is start with the back here. Let's go ahead and, with symmetry on, let's kind of pull these points like this. Okay. Okay. And what I want to do now is, let's go ahead and take this plane, and I'm going to extrude it. Let's go over to multiply here, and the extrude tool. And this view here, front view, just hold down Control and pull it on down. Okay. So now let's take a look at these polygons here. I'm going to go ahead, smooth shift those, and then move them right back. Now here's where I'm going to start optimizing the geometry as we get closer to the wrist. Let's move some of these points around here. Spin quads are right here. There we go. Deselect these, because that's the direction that I want the polygons to continue to go in. Spin quads one more time there. Now let's move these points around a bit. Okay. Now, let's do one more operation here where I'm going to get rid of this geometry, rid of these chunks right here. And let's go ahead and cut out all this as well. And let's go ahead and re-extrude this new shape here. Let's pull it right down. Now let's move some of these points around a bit. And this segment right here is where I'm going to extrude the wrist out from. So I'm going to take this, smooth shift. Let's just move that right out there. Stretch it in a bit here. Good. We've got sort of a flat shape going on here. Okay. And then let's go ahead and select a row of polygons along this band, and we're going to bandsaw right through the middle of those. So let's bring up our bandsaw tool, right down the middle. Let's put it on auto, and there we go. So now let's start manipulating some of these points to get the shape the way we want it. Let's start with the wrist. Okay. So in the front view here, let's go ahead and start moving these points around and rounding out the wrist here. Okay. And don't really be concerned with the connection here, because we're going to edit all those points as well. You kind of want it to be more round but oval this way, like a regular wrist would be. Okay. And then let's go ahead and select polygons on the top of the hand here. All these guys here. And the top view here. Let's stretch them in a bit. Pull them up. And let's edit some of these points with the drag tool. Pull these down. And do the same thing on the underside here. Stretch them in. Pull them down a bit here. And let's drag. Okay. Now, before we get to the fingers, let's take a look at the palm. Let's grab all the geometry on the underside here, and let's go ahead and hit plus. We'll hide the unselected stuff. Okay. So this will be the side that we're going to extrude out the thumb from. So let's go ahead and turn off symmetry for a moment. And we're going to just manipulate some of these points around a bit. So ultimately we're going to smooth shift a shape out of this that will look similar to a palm. Okay. Now let's unhide. Jump back here. Okay. Now let's take a look at all the polygons on the front here. You see that each one of these is going to represent a section of which we're going to smooth shift out a finger from. So let's go ahead and go into the next available layer. And we're going to create a finger, start with the middle finger, and then we're going to add all the detail necessary for that finger, and then just clone that finger and scale it as appropriate need. So let's go ahead and drag a box out. And in this case, as per what we've done so far, we want it to have 2 segments this way, 2 segments on the Y. And then let's just drag it out. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and center this finger so that we can use symmetry on it. Let's move it back here. And let's turn on symmetry. So now I have a clean slate to work from. Rather than extruding the finger directly from the hand geometry, I have a perfect square from which to start from. So let's go ahead with symmetry on and round out our finger a little bit here. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is, let's go ahead and select the polygon on the end, and let's just stretch it in a bit. And that'll give it, move it up here, a natural taper all the way down to the end of the finger. Let's focus more in on that polygon. And we're going to round that out in the top view as well. The side view. Okay. Now we're just going to kind of keep it a general finger shape here. Okay. Let's go ahead and put these back on the x-axis there. So occasionally you might notice if you're editing that you might break the symmetry. And what I like to do is just select the points that are right along the x-axis there and use the set value tool to place them back at 0 on the x. Okay. So then let's add our divisions. We need 2 joints in the finger. One right about here and one right about here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and use the knife tool to start adding the divisions I need. So under multiply, or construct rather, you can find the knife tool. It's Shift K on the keyboard. And the easiest way to add these multiple divisions is to just use the right mouse button. I'm going to hold down Control. With the right mouse button, I'm going to click and drag straight through the finger. And with the right mouse button, then I'm going to click 2 more times for that joint. And then bring it down here 2 times for this joint. Okay. So I want to just actually move this one up a little bit here. So now I've got the joints, and we've retained the natural taper of the finger here. So let's go ahead and look at adding the detail we need. First thing I think I'm going to do is stretch it in a little bit, make it a little fatter. Okay. Now let's start with the side view. Just going to pull some of these points down a little bit here. Pull some of these up a little. And in the top of the finger, just pull this one up a little bit. Tiny bit of a hint of the knuckle there. And let's look in the perspective window here. Let's pull it out a tiny bit here. I don't want it to look too knuckly. There we go. And then let's come back to the back end of the finger. You could use your own fingers as reference. Kind of have a little bit more of a meaty section under the back section of the first finger here. A little bit of a knuckle going on there. There we go. Again, I don't want to exaggerate this too much. I want to have the landscape there to be able to create the finger properly. Okay. So now let's move to the front end of the finger, where we're going to check out the nail section, the fingernail. So let's grab these 6 polygons right at the tip of the finger there, and go ahead and smooth shift. And in the right side view here, let's go ahead and bring them up like that, and stretch them in a little bit in the top. And I'm just going to manipulate some of the points around a bit here. And see what we've got. Okay. Little cuticle action there. And then let's grab this piece again, and we'll smooth shift it one more time. And we'll stretch it in a little bit, create the little indentation where the fingernail will be. So right now it's a little bit wide. Let's grab the entire set that we just made, stretch them in a little bit here. Okay. Now let's take a closer look at the fingernail. Let's go ahead and move some of these points down a bit. And let's grab these polygons one more time and smooth shift. This time let's move them right out a little bit. So create a little bit of a fingernail there. Move these down. Very thin like a fingernail there. A little bit of a fingernail. And we go back to that. I'm going to accentuate that a little bit more. Just get a little bit more of the cuticle there. So actually let me go ahead and bring this back. Okay. And what I'm going to do here is round it off a little bit here, and as well as this way. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at the tip here. I'm going to go ahead and hit plus while I have this selected. Grab the knuckle as well. And hit plus and hide unselected here. And let's grab our fingernail points. Okay. And deselect the middle ones. Oops, sorry about that. Leave those selected. Now, in the front view, let's pull them down a little. Get a little arc on that nail. Okay. And then let's come back to the tip of the nail. Deselect the side ones. Let's move it a little bit forward. There we go. And maybe we'll make it a little bit flatter underneath here. Study your own finger, you probably find that tapers off a bit right underneath, right at the tip there. Okay, let's unhide our finger here. Okay. And again, for our character, he's kind of more of a beefy guy. Let's stretch it a little bit in the top view again, just to fatten it up a bit. Fatter finger. Let's see what we've got. And at this point I'm going to go ahead and save this. Let's put in the same directory our work folder. Let's call it hand 01. It's a good idea to save pretty frequently. And we'll revisit the finger. Let's come back to the hand here. And again, take a look at the geometry in the front where the fingers are going to go. Now, select that geometry in the front view. Let's just drag some of the points around a little bit. Okay. I want to flatten it out a little bit there. bring it back a bit. Remember, this is the palm, and then this would be the top of the hand. Okay. And then let's go ahead and look at this line right here. Again, if you study your own hand, you might notice that the fingers stem off from the hand at different heights. So what I want to do is grab a couple of these polygons here. Let's turn off symmetry, because this is going to be an asymmetrical side of it. This section here, since this is going to be our thumb area, this piece here is going to represent the middle finger. It's going to pull that way out there. That's the highest one. Okay. And then let's move the points for the index finger section out like that a bit. Okay. And let's take the pinky here. Let's go ahead and move it. Use the rotate tool. We'll put it back a little like that. And let's go ahead and take our ring finger section, kind of do like that. Pinky's the furthest one back. And the middle and ring fingers are the furthest forward. You may notice that your index finger is actually pretty close to the same length as your ring finger. The ring finger appears longer because it stems a little bit higher off the palm. Okay. So let's go ahead and attach our fingers. We'll start with our index finger here. Let's come back to that and put the hand in the background layer. Now let's look at it in terms of its ratio to the palm. If you look at the palm, you might need to scale it up a little bit. Let's go ahead and use the size tool. If your finger, just look at it versus the scale. If it doesn't look quite right, you can scale it up or down. If it looks like it's going to be right on, don't bother scaling it. Okay, so now I'm going to move it over slightly to right about where it's going to be on the hand. It's right there. Okay. And let's go ahead and copy this finger. First thing I'm going to do actually is take this geometry here and I'm going to cut it out. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to weld this finger onto this hand. So let's go ahead and copy the finger and paste it on the hand here. Now let's zoom in on our hand here. Grab these polygons of the hand and cut them away. Now let's go ahead and select the finger, unsubdivide it, and what we're going to do is weld some points here. So let's go ahead and move the geometry around a little bit. Okay. And let's go ahead and use the weld tool, which is Control W. I'm going to select the point of the hand, then the finger, and Control W, and weld those. And do the same thing all the way around. Just rotate the object around in the perspective window. If you're having a hard time exactly seeing where the points line up, sort of edit them to match up a little bit easier. Just weld those. And let's go ahead and weld those. Again, I find it easiest to do in the perspective window just because you can rotate the model around and see where the points are lining up. Okay. Now we should have a finger welded right on there. I start with the index finger, or the middle finger rather, because it's going to stem straight off the hand. The other fingers we're going to put on slight angles so they could be spread out from one another so the bone influence doesn't carry over from one finger to the other. Okay, so let's come back to our finger here. And what I'm going to do is scale it down a little bit. Let's use the size tool and make it a little smaller. And that's going to be the index finger. So let's move that over. Let's copy it, paste it right in here. Let's go ahead and select it. In the top view here, let's rotate it a little bit. Okay. Let's get a better look here. Let's move some of the points around so we can start to line them up. Okay. And let's cut that geometry out just like we did for the middle finger. And let's start welding those points. Okay, so now we've got 2 fingers. And we continue the process, same process for the rest of the fingers. Now the index finger, I'm going to use the same geometry for the ring finger, because again it's pretty close in terms of size. It appears as though it's longer because it stems out higher up. So let's rotate that a little. Yeah, let's go ahead and copy it, paste it in here. Yeah, let's move the geometry around a little. Okay, and again, cut this away and start welding those points. Can get a little tricky, but you can always select your geometry and sort of see where the points are a little bit easier. Okay, what do we have here? We've got 3 fingers. And last but not least, we need the pinky. I'm going to scale this one down. Pinky's usually quite a bit smaller. And stem's much lower. And let's go ahead and rotate it a bit. And let's go ahead and cut that one out and paste it right in there. And another cutaway of our geometry here. And we'll start welding the points. And what we're going to do next is once we have our fingers in place, we can begin working on the palm section, the area just below the fingers, as well as the padding where the thumb stems out from. Let's take a look here. Okay. 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 So here's the top of our hand, and here's the underside. So let's go ahead and focus on this area right in here. If you, again, look at your own hand, there's a little bit of a indentation right in the middle here, caused by the extra bit of padding here and here. So let's go ahead and unsubdivide. Let's grab this geometry right in here. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and smooth shift that piece. Right click once and stretch in the top view. Let's pull it down a bit. And take a look in the top view. What we want to do is have, again, this line sort of follow like that, which sort of drag these points around a bit. Kind of mimic the shape of the underside of the hand. Let's go and pull it forward a bit. Yeah, you use the perspective view to see if there's any areas that aren't quite looking right. Again, we're just starting to make the landscape that we need to create the shapes. Let's go ahead and mush these in a bit. And then pull these forward. Okay. There's a lot of point manipulation with the drag tool. And let's take a look at the underside of the palm here. Let's go ahead and grab this geometry here. Let's just pull it down a little bit here. And I'm going to go ahead and smooth shift this piece. So, smooth shift on top view. I'm going to stretch it a bit. Pull it down. Start to create that thumb pad there. And let's go ahead and edit those points. I'm going to push that in deeper. Let's accentuate this here. Really start to bring out that shape. Let's move it over a little bit. And again, I'm pretty much constantly looking at my own hand while I'm doing this. Turning the hand over. It's the best reference. And then there's a little bit of padding right here. Let's see what I'm going to do here. Let's just kind of drag that out a little bit. Might be enough. See how it looks here. Pull that in a bit. So again, this method has enabled us to have all the detail we need up here, but left us with not so much detail at the wrist, which is good for optimizing the geometry, but it also makes it quite a bit easier to stick this hand on other characters. Once you're happy with it. Okay, so before we go on to the thumb, let's focus on this region up here. So I'm going to actually grab this geometry up here, and I'm going to hit plus. So in the top view, I won't be too distracted by what's underneath. Okay. Now let's take these sections here, and I'm going to go ahead and smooth shift them out one at a time, and try and create a little bit of that shape that's on the top of your hand, where your bones kind of poke through a little bit. So let's grab this here. And let's smooth shift. You could start with any finger, or kind of do the same sort of operation for all three. Create a little bit of a knuckle there. Let's bring it in here. See how it looks. Again, I'm just kind of go for the hint of that shape. I don't want it too defined. Just a little bit of the idea that it's there. Well, let's do the same thing over here. Let's move that forward. Okay, let's pull it down a bit here. And these ones will get a little bit more tricky because the geometry is laid out a little bit differently. So let's go ahead and start with the pinky here. And let's go ahead and smooth shift this little chunk here. And in this one I'm going to do a little bit of spin quads, fix up some of the flow here. Let's go ahead and look closely here, see if we can change that. Let's go with that. Again, that's Control K. Let's make that a little more subtle here. Just need just a hint of that shape, so that when it catches certain light, you can see a little bit of that shadow. Let's do the same thing over here. I'm just going to continue to manipulate some of the points here and create the shape. Let's just do another spin quads like we did over on the pinky side here. Let's pull these out a little bit. Okay. Now let's unhide our geometry there. Again, fix the half and half. Half subpatch, half faces issue there. Okay. So I'm going to focus on the thumb. So let's go ahead and take a look at this region in here. I'm going to shoot the thumb out from these 4 polygons here. Let's pull this down. Let's do a little editing here. Okay, so let's go ahead and smooth shift this section. I just move this point here. Okay, smooth shift. The top view here, let's go ahead and move it out a bit. And the side view, let's stretch it in. And let's start to just manipulate some of the points a little bit here. And on the top view, let's also go ahead and rotate it a little bit that way. Start getting it going in that direction. And let's look right in here. Let's fix some of that up here. Maybe we'll spin quads right here twice, or do it. And let's edit that. Okay. Let's come back to our thumb appendage here. And let's smooth shift again. And this time stretch it in again a little bit here. And move it out. Let's rotate it as well. Okay. I'll extrude the thumb out on an angle slightly. So as your thumb in sort of a relaxed pose, kind of comes down a little bit. Okay. Let's take a look right under here as well. Let's see what we've got so far. Okay. Let's grab that piece one more time here. Get the rotate tool here. I'm going to rotate it a little bit more. And Let's go ahead and smooth shift it again and move it out along here. Let's rotate it in this view. You'll notice that your thumb is pretty much your kind of fattest digit on your hands, but generally the same shape. Got the nail and things like that. So for the end of the thumb, I'm going to steal some geometry from this index finger here. Let's grab that tip right there. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to copy that. Let's paste it in the next layer here. Because I want it to become a little bit different shape. The thumb is generally kind of a wee bit fatter. Stretch it out a little bit here. And let's move some of the points around. Stretch it this way a bit. Pull some of these out a little bit here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare it. Let's just fix this up a little bit. I'm going to compare it in scale to the index finger here. And again, look at your own thumb. It's a little bit bigger. So let me just go ahead and scale it up even more a little bit. And let's move it over. Check that comparison. That looks about good. Okay. So let's bring it over here. And down a little bit. Now what I'm going to do is, the thumb's sort of on a different plane. It's angled this way outward. So I'm going to go ahead and in this view, front view here, hit R to rotate it 90 degrees. And I do that twice. 3 times actually, to get it to go all the way around. So I want it sort of on that plane. Okay. And let's rotate it. I'm going to have it give it a little bit of an angle here. And be sure that when you look at it in this angle, it's also in line with the extrusion that we made there. And you can create the thumb on a plane if you find it easier to set up. I usually find the deformations are better in this region when the thumb is already slightly on a plane, on an angle. Okay. So let's go ahead and take a look at our geometry in here. It's coming a little bit closer. Deselect some of these. This piece. Let's bring it in here. And the perspective view, let's take a look at it. Size it up a bit. Stretch it. Let's do the same in the top view here. Okay. And then let's go ahead and cut away that end piece. So we're going to weld the thumb on, just like we did the fingers to the hand. Now in general, looks like we need this whole thumb piece here to be a bit bigger. So let's go ahead and manipulate some of these points. Since the thumb isn't really on a perfect plane, it might make it a little bit difficult to scale in terms of using the size tool. Okay. Now let's come back to our thumb here. Again, let's check that angle. Okay, let's copy it. Paste it into the next layer here. Now let's make it easy. Let's kind of just select these 2 rings here. And let's hit plus to hide the unselected stuff. And I'll zoom in and go ahead and start welding these points. All the way around. let's see what we get. Okay. So let's take our thumb. Obviously it's not quite the right distance and scale. Let's move it in a little bit. And let's fix some of this geometry in here. If you look, your thumb has a little bit of two knuckles, just like the finger does. The joint down here at the end is a little bit fatter, more prominent. Still not quite right. Let's go ahead and look at this region here. Let's move this much further up there. Let's take the whole thumb here. Bring it in and up a little bit. Getting warmer. Again, it's a lot of point tweaking and manipulation to get it just right. And let's take a look under here as well. I want to fix that up a bit. Zoom in here. And I'm looking at my own thumb here. And let's smooth out some of this geometry. Let's take these two polys, spin quads, and then let's drag this one down a bit. We're starting to get a more reasonable looking hand here. Let's accentuate this section even more here. And again, it's just kind of a lot of tweaking, a lot of point manipulation using the drag tool until you get it just the way you want it. And depending on the level of complexity of the model, this could take minutes or hours. It all depends on exactly what you're trying to achieve. Okay. Let's go ahead and be sure to save again. Let's go ahead and take our hand and see if we can stick it on our body there. Okay, so now what we're going to do is take our hand and stick it in the sleeve of the body geometry that we already created. We may have to scale it slightly since we just started working from scratch on this one. So I'm going to go ahead, I've saved the object, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to come back to my body object here. And as you can already see, the body which we made to scale is much smaller than the hand that we're going to paste in here. Let's go ahead and hit V. Dum dum dum. Monster hand. So yeah, so what we need to do is scale it. First thing I want to do is rotate it so it's facing the right direction. Let's go ahead and hit R. Let's rotate 90 degrees. And let's put it right about there. And for kicks, we'll look at it. Ha. Okay, come back to the hand. And let's grab this size tool, capital H. And just put it right there. And scale away. Okay. And let's zoom in. See if that's about right. Again, this character kind of has big hands, I guess you could say, in relation to the rest of his body, just kind of like everything else on him. It's a little bit exaggerated. Those are might be a little bit too big still. Let's go ahead and scale some more. Okay. And let's take the wrist here and let's fatten it up a bit. Just using the stretch tool, just kind of scaling it up. And then what I'm going to do is kind of try and give the hand a little bit more of a beefy feel. Select all that geometry on the top there. And let's go to the Modify tab and use the Magnet tool. Just kind of right-click out here in the side view. Just kind of mush that up a bit. Okay. More beefy hand there, and then let's grab some of this geometry down here, including the thumb. Let's deselect those. And let's kind of pull this down a bit. Fat hand guy. Okay. Okay. So now let's swap the layers. And let's zoom in on our suit here, costume. Let's go ahead and make this fit around this wrist. Let's take a look here. Stretch it in the side view here. And before we do that, make sure you have symmetry on. So let's go ahead and deselect that and Shift Y. Activate the symmetry function. Now let's come back here and let's go ahead and stretch. Stretch it down and stretch it in this way. And let's take a closer look. Let's put both layers together. Let's go ahead and select this geometry. Now, put both layers together. Let's go ahead and take a look. Let's move up our hand a little. Nice little fit there. Oops. Let's fix some of this. Okay. And let's edit the forearm slightly to make it so that this slope isn't so dramatic. Let's come back in here. Let's take a look. Let's look in the top view as well. Pull it in a little bit. Want some of that slope in there still, but we want to kind of keep it from looking too bizarre. Okay. Let's reference the art. Let's see. You can see his fist, palm of his hands, practically the size of his head there. About half the distance of his chest. So, let's come back here. Still think maybe the hand's a little bit too big. This time, let's go in and select the hand as well as the wrist. And let's use the size tool. And I'll just squeeze them in a little bit more. And let's test it against our template that we put in the far background layer. Let's see, it's kind of jutting out a bit too far. So let's go ahead and see what we can do to remedy that as well. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and mirror the hand. Let's go to capital V, open up the numeric panel. And right on the x-axis there, and spacebar, we've got two hands. Okay. And let's focus in on this region, starting to look a little strange. Let's come back here. What I want to do is have the elbow jet out a bit more than it is. So let's get back to tweaking that a bit. I want to take this entire section of the arm, pull it in a little bit. And these are changes that may or may not be required on your model. It all depends on how the geometry's been laid out. You may find that it's matched lining up perfectly, or you might find it needs a lot of point tweaking. Just kind of shorten the arms a little bit here. Let's take a look in here. And each operation I perform, just about every one, is followed up by a little bit of point manipulation. And he's got some really big, beefy arms here. Okay. Now let's go ahead and stick those hands right in the body there. We'll save this object again. Okay, so now we've got our completed body, and all we have left to do is his costuming elements. What we're going to do now is create his cape and belt, and followed by sticking his head on there. Okay, so let's take a look at our character here, and let's reference the art. Okay, he's got sort of a long cape, comes down to about the back of his ankles, and he's got a utility belt, your standard superhero issue utility belt with packs to hold his various crime fighting tools. So let's go ahead and start with the belt. Let's come back in here. Let's go ahead and take the midsection of the character, and I'm going to select his entire waist and hit plus, which is hide unselected. And then I'm going to come into the next available layer here and put that waist in the background. And what I'm going to start off with is a disc. Let's go ahead to the Create tab and find the disc tool. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag out this disc here in the top view, and I'm going to open the numeric panel. Because this object, just like the other pieces of geometry on this character, are going to be a subdivisional surface object, so I'm going to lower the sides quite a bit. Instead of 24, let's start by making it 12. And leave the segments and everything else as they are. Just hit the space bar here. Now I've got this disc right here, and just to ensure that we're going to have a symmetrical object, let's turn symmetry off and center it. It puts it right down at 0, 0, 0. In the side view, let's go ahead and move it up again. This way we know it's perfectly symmetrical on either side. Okay. So let's come back in here. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and turn symmetry back on. Let's select that polygon and use the bevel tool. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down Control in the top view, just click and drag the mouse to the left a little. Holding down the Control key will constrain the inset of the bevel without making it shift. And then what I'm going to do is take this polygon that's still selected and just cut it away. So now I just have this ring of polys. Let's go ahead and select those, and we'll use the Extrude tool. Again, let's hold down Control in the front view here. Just pull down, make his belt. Then we hit Tab, and we've got this solid belt form here. Now what I'm going to do is take a look at the waistline and edit the belt to fit around it. So let's start in the side view. Let's come right over here and move it inward. Let's grab some of the back side here, move it upward a bit. Let's check out the back again. Let's go ahead and grab some of these points here, and we'll move them around to fit the shape there. Spine kind of comes in a little bit. If we have to, let's grab the belt back piece. Let's rotate a little in the side view. Now let's move this whole piece up a little bit. Make sure it doesn't get too bent. Let's see how it looks by putting the two layers together. See that right in there would still stand to come in a bit. Let's grab the points of the side of the belt there, pull them in a little. And let's do the same thing. This time we'll just grab the top sides and move them in a bit. See what we've got. Just going to fit that right around his waist there. Okay? And then it looks like these can stand to come in a little bit. Don't have to be right on the money, but we just want it to conform to his shape. Okay. Now let's go ahead and unhide our body and take a look. And we're going to cover the belt with his various tools and such. Okay. Let's leave the belt in the extra layer here, and we'll just make his belt buckle. Okay. So let's go in the next available layer here. Put our belt in the background. Now let's just take a look real quick at the artwork. His belt buckle is essentially just your standard clip buckle. So we're just going to make something that looks sort of like a square, but goes around the belt. So let's come in the side view, and let's zoom in here a little. Let's make a box, just like that. And only one segment, get rid of that. Okay. And I hit the space bar. And let's select this box. I'm only really looking at the side view right now. It's not centered, but I'm just really dealing with the side. Let's go ahead and bevel again, B on the keyboard. Let's break in there. And let's grab these two polygons that we just made, cut them away. Let's grab these points, and let's just stretch them up together. Move them in a bit. Okay. And now select our little shape there, and let's extrude it right in the front view there. Okay. And we're starting to get our belt buckle. Let's go ahead and turn symmetry off for a moment, and F2 will center this thing so we know it's right in the middle. In the side view, just move it right up into position there. Okay. And it looks like it's a little wide. Let's just stretch it in a bit. Okay. And let's go ahead and bandsaw right down the center here. Let's grab some of these polygons from this band. And what I want to do is sharpen up the edges on both sides. So I'm going to edit the divide. I'm going to move it close to the edge there. Since I want a cut here and a cut here, I'm going to say mirror that cut. So I'll get two, one on each side. Okay. Now let's see how it looks. Okay. And next we're just going to sharpen up these edges here. So let's grab this row of polygons and do the same thing. Bandsaw those on either edge. Get a little bit of a belt buckle going there. Let's move it up a little bit. And let's just cut that out, paste it right on our belt. Let's take a look here. Just need to edit it slightly, make it fit. So just go ahead and move pieces up a bit. And down here. There we go. Okay. And let's save again. Now let's go on to make some of his pouches he's got along his belt there. Let's take a look at the art one more time. And they're just kind of your standard pouch with a flap and a little button on them. So let's go ahead and create those. Let's come over here. And we'll go to the next available layer. We'll make one, and then we'll just clone it all around the belt. And we might vary up the size a bit so they look like they hold different things. So let's go ahead and start again with a box. And let's just do one segment. Let's drag it out a bit here. Okay. And let's go ahead and let's make it a little smaller here. Okay, let's just hit spacebar, and there's our first one. Maybe narrow it a little bit. Okay, and let's hit the tab key. See what we've got. Let's put a knife cut through it. Shift K on the keyboard. This knife right close to the top there. And right click one more time. Not quite as close, but towards the bottom. So the bottom edge will be a little bit rounder, while the top edge stays a bit firm. And let's do the same thing over here along this edge. We'll keep it so that the back side stays a little bit more of a sharp curve, whereas the front stays a little bit rounded. So let's cut right close to the back end here. There we go. Okay. And let's just go ahead and make a little flap for the top of this pouch here. Let's just draw a box right over it. And give it a little bit of thickness there. And the side view here is the arrows to add, let's say, 4 segments. Hit the space bar. Let's bring it up here. And let's move these right up close to the back there. Keep that edge sharp. Let's move these over. And let's rotate the flap downward. See what we've got. Let's go ahead and move a little of these points here. Okay, and let's stretch it in a little bit here. Paste it right on there. Now let's go ahead and bandsaw right through the center so we can bend it down a little bit. So let's clear our earlier division. Put one right in the center there. Okay. And let's grab this one right on the edges there. And I'll do it one at a time. We don't have to worry too much about being perfectly symmetrical on this piece. See how it looks there. Now let's bring it down a little bit more. And a little bit more rounded. There we go. So from a distance, this will look like a perfectly good pouch. Even though we know in reality it's not usable since it has no interior. And let's just sink that in a little bit. And let's make a little button for it. A little snap. So let's go into the next layer here. And I'm just going to create a box. This time I'll hold down Control, I'd click and drag on the front view, make a perfect equal box there. And in the top view, just drag it out a little bit. And just put 2 segments in it there. Actually, let's just make 1. Hit the space bar. And let's go ahead and take this back polygon, cut it right out. Don't need that. Hit Tab. And we'll just move it into position here. Let's go ahead and stretch it. There we go. Okay, now let's see where we're going to place this. Let's go ahead and take this and copy it and paste it into the next available layer. That way we can rotate it around and things and not worry about making it difficult to edit the other ones. We'll still have one that's perfectly lined up here. So the belt in the background, let's go ahead and move this right over and rotate it so it lines up with the belt there. And maybe we'll rotate a little bit that way too. Go ahead and select it, and C then V, copy paste, T for move. Let's go ahead and bring it over again. Get our second one here. And take a look in the perspective view, see how it's lining up. And let's go back to this one here. Let's copy that and paste it in this layer with the other 2 here. Because what we're going to do with this one is we're going to change its scale a little bit. Let's make this one a little bit bigger, just to break it up a little. And we'll rotate it to fit on the belt here. And let's come back to this guy again here. Copy him. Paste him. Let's take this one and we'll stretch it in a bit. Just go ahead and do it manually. Use the move tool so I don't change the proportions of that little snap there. Okay. So for the sake of asymmetry, I'm going to go ahead and put this one over here. So he's got one big pouch on this side and then maybe 2 smaller ones on this side. Let's keep him a little interesting looking. And copy paste. Let's put another one right in there. Okay. And then let's take these 2 right here, the first ones we made. Just select those. Let's go ahead and just mirror those right along the X. Okay. And let's see how it looks. Cut them, paste them onto the belt there. He's got a lot of gadgetry and stuff. Continue on. Everything on the back is going to be covered by the cape. And you can clutter his utility belt with whatever things you might want to put on there. It doesn't have to be pouches, it could be capsules or grappling hooks or whatever. Okay. So let's go ahead and save. I'm going to take this whole piece here and I'm going to copy it. And let's create a new object. Shift N. And let's just paste it in the first layer. Okay, so now the last thing we're going to do is apply the cape. So let's check the concept art, see the design, and see how we can translate it into 3D. And basically the character has your standard cape, but you can see it's sort of got some of that droopy cape action going in the back and a couple of wrinkles and things like that. So what we want to do is try and mimic that shape when we make the cape here. So let's go ahead and come back to our body, which we've put into a new object. And before we go on, let's go ahead and save this one. And we'll call it, the last one we saved was body_01. Let's call it 02. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the Modeler drop-down tab. And under Windows, let's open up the Layer Browser. So what we're going to do with this character, ultimately, is keep his cape on a separate layer so that we can set up its rig separately. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this layer currently that the body's in, which is called Unnamed, and I'm going to double-click right where it says Unnamed there. Now it's giving me the option to name this layer. So I'm going to call it Body. And this will carry over when we save the object with its final name. And then let's go into Layer 2 here, which currently has nothing in it. And double-click on that one, and we're going to call that Cape. So when we load this model into the layout, ultimately to rig it, we'll have these naming conventions in there as well. So let's put our body in the background layer there. And the same way we want to make the model on planes and have the default pose be all on these planes, which make it easier for bones, I'm going to do the cape the same way. Whereas the cape is naturally going to sort of dangle over his shoulders. But in essence, that's really a pose. The cape is deformed. What I'm going to do is build the cape kind of straight out, as if it were just blowing in the wind. And then we're going to set the bones in there and use them to sort of move the cape around. So let's come back over here. And let's create a box. Let's drag out a box in the top view. And let's get rid of that segment there. With the arrow keys, let's add, say, a total of 6 segments to the plane. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hit the space bar without dragging in the other window, so we've created just a plane. Okay. So let's go ahead and make sure that symmetry is deactivated, and I'm just going to hit F2 to center this item. Now let's go ahead and move it right up to where his shoulders would be. Okay, back a little bit in the side view here. And let's reactivate symmetry. Shift Y. Let's turn that back on. Then what I'm going to do is use the Bend tool. So let's go over to Modify. And I'm going to grab the Bend tool here. And in the side view, let's click and drag it over a little bit. So we get that shape. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is, let's go ahead and hit Shift A, zoom in a little bit here, and I'll start dragging some of the points out. Let's go ahead and pull this one. Okay. And I'm just kind of making the shape that will be our cape here. It's the front section here. Okay. And so now what I want to do is I want to create the shape that I need to make the proper form of the cape, the billowing in the back and such. So I'm going to grab this plane and I'm going to extrude it. Let's go ahead in the front view, just extrude it downward like that. And then what I want to do is I'm going to grab these two sides and I'm going to smooth shift them. So let's smooth shift and just move it over a little bit. And then let's go ahead and grab all these back polygons and smooth shift them as well. This time let's just move them back a bit. So now what I've got is solid object, but I'm going to delete all those extra polygons and come back to having just a plane. So let's go ahead and take all these polys here, including the bottom ones. Let's cut them out. And you see now the shape that I have. I'm going to start editing the points here a little bit. The shape that I have will be much more conducive to creating the shape that we have in the art. Let's go ahead and take a look again at the concept art. And basically I want to have two sort of folds right on the edges. And then I also want to create these ridges, these scooping ridges back in the back there, while still having these sort of the bunchiness right around the front. So let's go back to our model here. And let's keep dragging out here. And let me go ahead and drag these points, select them all, and I'll move them way out just to about the length I think I want the cape to be. Let's bring it right about there. And I'm going to drag and sort of do that, kind of widen it out a bit. Okay. Now let's focus back on this region here. And let's take a look. What we'll do is I'll come back. Let's swap the layers and go into the body object here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select just this upper region here, sort of the top of his torso and his shoulders. And let's go ahead and hit plus. That way when I have this in the background layer, I can see just the shoulders. I won't be distracted by everything that's beneath it. So let's swap those layers back. And I'm going to go ahead and let's add a cut right through here, because I want to bring this cape right around to the front. So with the knife tool, Shift K, I'm going to cut straight through. And I can see the ring, which represents where the neckline will be. I don't have to be too exact, just kind of around that area. I'm going to bring this around here. And let's grab these points here, pull them out a bit. Let's do one more cut straight through. Bring the cape right around. It's going to sort of clasp right in the front there. And let's grab all these points here and use the set value tool, Control V. And I'm going to put them right on the x-axis there. Now they're right on top of each other. So what I'm going to do now is hit M for merge points. I'm just going to go ahead. It should say 3 points merged. Right down here. 3 points eliminated. So now it's all one piece, essentially with a hole in the middle. Okay. Alright. So we'll continue to drag some of these points out a little bit here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this ring right in here, and I'm going to bandsaw through that and create a couple divisions in there. So let's open up the bandsaw tool here, and let's go ahead and select this Add button here. And let's add 3 cuts all together. And let me push this Uniform button, which will make these all equidistant from one another. And I'll say OK. Okay. All right. So now what I'm going to do is start with this middle row right here. Zoom in here. And let's go ahead and let's grab the whole thing. What I'm going to do, I'm going to smooth shift. So let's go ahead and smooth shift. Right click once. And in the side view, let's move it up a bit. Okay. And now let's check it out in the top view. Just drag some of these points a bit. And it gets a little close in here. Okay. Now come back to the side view, and let's just rotate it down a little bit, like that. We've got our first cape-like bump there. And let's go ahead and do the same thing here. Now to make it a little easier, I'm going to use the bandsaw tool again. This time, I'm going to select the bandsaw tool. I'm going to turn off the divide function. And basically, I'm just going to use it as a selection tool to select the entire area. That whole band. So it gets a little hairy trying to get them all in there. So let's do this again. Smooth shift, right click, let's move it up a little. Move these out a bit. And let's see, in the side view, let's move it up a little bit higher than the last one and rotate it downward. Okay. And let's take some of these points. You can see here, this curve here isn't quite right. Let's go ahead and take some of these points right in the middle. Let's move them away a little bit. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this row of polygons, stems all the way out to the end of the cape, and I'll smooth shift those as well. Right click once, so move it up a bit. And let's go ahead and drag the points around a bit. Zoom in up here. And let's deselect these back ones and rotate these down a bit. Okay. And the other thing I'm going to do is take these two polygons, these extras that have been created here, and just going to cut those away. So we have more of a scooping thing going on there. And again, let's take a look at the art. And so shapes create those ridges right there. And I'm starting to get that sort of scooping in the back there. Okay. So with that, let's go ahead and move this whole section down a little bit. Take some of these points. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bandsaw through this section as well as this section so that I have a nice area for the cape to bend over his shoulders. Let's go ahead and select a row of polygons here. Bring back up the bandsaw. I'm going to click Enable Divide, and this time I'm just going to hit the clear button to get rid of what we had done previously. Okay, and I'll do the same thing over here. And then, as always, a little point manipulation here. Let's move some of these, keep this curve nice. Again, let's go ahead and do a little rotating here. Just editing the points, editing the shape. Now let's take a look right in here. Let's kind of round that in a little bit. This doesn't look quite as much of a cut right there. I'm just going to select these back polygons here and smooth shift just that little section right there. Just move it up a bit. Rotate in the side view a bit here. So it looks a little more curved back there. Alright. So then what I want to do is I want the cape, right now I've only got one segment right here. I want the cape to be able to bend and twist in all sorts of ways. So I'm going to add a series of cuts right through the cape here. Again, the quickest way to do that would be with the bandsaw tool. So I'm going to go ahead and activate our bandsaw here. And with the add button still selected, let's go ahead and click in there, say 4, 5, 6 maybe times. And we're going to test this out, see how it looks. And that looks about good. So that was 6 divisions. That'll be enough to sort of bend the cape around. Now let's go ahead and just add a few more ripples in this flat region here. Let's grab the whole middle. And I'm going to smooth shift it. Let's pull it in the top view here. And let's go ahead and cut out these middle polygons here. Take all the points in the middle here. Move them up slightly. All right. And let's make a couple more ripples here. Let's grab these points. Stretch them in a bit. Just to give the cape that sort of billowing feel. Let's grab these, smooth shift them. Okay. And again, let's go ahead and get rid of those. Let's see what we've got here. Let's move those up a bit. Okay. Now let's change the flow a little bit here. Right in here. Spin quads right there. Now let's leave it how it was. Right like that. 1 spin quads. Now let's check out this area here. Again, we can sort of be a little bit haphazard here. We want it to look sort of random and just kind of billowy. There we go. Okay, so let's then focus on the front portion, which is going to remain more rigid than the rest of the cape. In fact, the very front will probably remain completely rigid as we animate him. Let's focus on getting that to lay right on top of his shoulders there. First thing I want to do is have it so it's not quite so much on the actual shoulder muscle there. Let's go ahead and use the magnet tool again. Just drag out here, smoosh it in a little bit here. And here as well. And let's take these right in the front here. And let's go to the side view. Rotate them right down. Yeah, we'll stretch a little if we need to. Yeah, let's grab these points here. Let's move them down a little bit. What I'm also going to do is take a look at them. I'm going to rotate them this way. Let's go right in the perspective window here. Let's rotate them a little to line up with the slope of his shoulder there. And let's do the same thing on these as well. And take these and let's rotate them a little. And grab these points out here. Let's grab those and move them right in. Tuck that under. Let's see how it looks. Combine the layers here. And once we've got the deformation in the cape, we'll lie it down across his back and have it looking proper. Okay. So let's unhide the character here. Backslash. Okay. Let's see, that cape's probably about long enough. And that'll work. Let's go ahead and save again. And next up, we'll start applying some surfaces to this geometry. Okay, so now we've got the body. Let's go ahead and apply some surfaces to his costume. So let's go ahead and start off with his suit. Just going to grab some polygons on his suit there. Go ahead and select connected, and let's label a surface for it. Q on the keyboard, bring up the surface panel, and let's call it Hero Suit. And let's give it a color. You can really enable it whatever color you'd like. Originally I had the character sort of a brownish reddish color because he's sort of a goofy superhero and he's the Owl Man. So he's not your traditional superhero. Okay. And let's focus on his hands here for a moment. Let's put on symmetry. And let's go ahead and give a surface to the hands. Hero hands. Now we'll make it ultimately the same color we made his head. For now we'll just get a temporary surface in there. Something a little more red. Okay. And let's zoom in a little bit more. Give him a slightly different color for his fingernails. So let's go ahead and select all his fingernails here. Okay, so we'll just call that Hero Nails. Leave it the same color for now, maybe just make it a little bit brighter. There we go. Okay, and of course his cape. And make it whatever color you'd like. Let's see, Hero Cape. Start off with maybe just this sort of a bluish hue. Okay, let's go into his belt here. Let's go ahead and let's hide all this stuff here. Let's grab his belt. Classic superhero yellow belt will do. And let's hide that. Hero buckle. Let's just leave this gray for now. When we get into texturing him, we'll start adding different levels of diffuse and specularity and things like that. And let's just call these Hero packs. And maybe make them, again, like sort of a lightish brown, maybe. Okay. Okay, so for our last step, we're going to take the head that we made previously and paste it onto our character's body to complete the model. So I'm going to go ahead and load the work in progress head we had made. And we made the head right in the center there, but ultimately we want to put it in the proper position here. So let's see what we have. Let's go ahead and copy the head and paste it in the next available layer here. See, since we were working relatively to scale, it's pretty much in a good size ratio for the body. So let's go ahead and move it in the side view right up to the shoulders there where it should be. Again, I'm going to kind of place it where I think it should be in relation to the shoulders, not really worrying about what the geometry is doing in here, because I can always edit that. And that looks about right. Again, he does have a rather small head. And let's check the art here. And you can see, might even be a little bit too big here, as per the ratio of his head to the width of his shoulders. Let's go ahead and check that, see what we can do here. Let's scale it down a little bit here. Let's turn symmetry off. and activate the scale tool. Let's open up the numeric panel here, and let's size it down to about 94% or so, and scale it accordingly as per your model. You may find your head is too small, in which case you have to scale it up. So let's go ahead and undo that and make sure that the center value is 0. So that way we can keep the model symmetrical. Let's see how it looks now. It's a little bit more on the money there. So with that, let's take a closer look and edit the geometry of his collar to fit right around his head. So let's take a look at his collar here. Let's turn symmetry back on. In the side view here, just kind of rotate it a little bit here and move it over. Okay. And let's make the back side a little bit higher than the front. Okay. And let's swap the layers again. Let's kind of smooth the head up a little bit, just so his chin's coming out of his collar there. And let's swap back. Just a little tweaking of the polygons, manipulating the points into the right positions. Let's grab some of these points on the side here. Widen it up a little bit. And put the two together. So we got a nice little fit there. Okay. So let's go ahead and cut the head out, paste it right in there. Okay. And see how he looks with his cape there. And let's go ahead and save this model. Call it Body 03. Okay, and now we're ready to take a look at the final model here. And there it is. And there it is. And as you can see, organic modeling of the body, just like the head, requires a lot of fine-tuning and point tweaking. And as always, the more you practice, the faster and easier it'll become. You can apply these types of techniques to really any type of organic model. So until next time, I'm Todd Grimes, and thanks for joining me.